flat or round? As we know, there is much debate around this subject, and some seem to find even the idea of questioning it to be a disgrace, as if you have suddenly become Rumpelstiltskin and asked them to hand over their firstborn child. I don't think there should be a problem around having the conversation, and if someone ends up thinking I am stupid because of it, then so be it. But as we have seen of late, the establishment seemed rather keen on having a certain narrative in place and the advantages it holds. So I will examine the flat earth or globe earth question from my point of view and what advantage it may pose to have one being believed over the other. It has been part of the historical narrative for a while now that people stupidly believed the earth to be flat. They drew it, talked about it being so, put it in stories, and it was so. But then something changed. They discovered it wasn't, apparently around 500 BC. So, we have a round earth now, with all the maths and maps making it all nice and neat. I wonder if they had a system of vilifying people back then if they didn't believe it, like they did with other things and insisted that people believe, with very severe punishments if you didn't. But I figured, if you decided on the answers, and make sure you only teach that method and reasoning, you can easily move that thought through an academic community. I used to be amused by people getting irate about other people believing one or the other. My response was always that I don't actually mind which one it is, because I'm never going to know, and it does not change what my feet are stood upon. But I've changed that viewpoint slightly, because it may well be that I don't mind, but it's the why that niggles me. Why would they want us thinking it's round? And the opposite thought too. Why would they want us to think it's flat? Both given equal time and energy with no bias. And I've come across some very interesting theories along the way. Some I think are fascinating and to me hold merit and are worthy of attention. And even though I may not agree with their entire theory, it gives me ideas on how it may have been manipulated to how we know it today. One in particular I am intrigued by is the crater Earth theory / bigger Earth theory, which theorises that we are on both a flat surface area in a crater on a much, much bigger Earth, and the other craters are the other planets we see and are told of being reflected onto the dome of the firmament. So when they say go to Mars, maybe they do, because it's over there, not up there. Once you fall into the crater theory, there are many ideas that come from it. None provable, of course, but they make sense. So, I tend to then go to the why again. Why would they want to lie? If you knew your world was suddenly much bigger, much more amazing and far-reaching, would it change how you see it? What would you do in it? Where you might like to go if you knew it just went on and on. Still vast distances, but exploring to the ends of the realm. It would be harder to contain people if they knew and were working together to discover that. But as with much in this world, there are gatekeepers to this information and opportunity. Like if you found the Fountain of Youth, would you run and tell everyone about it? Or an endless bucket of money? Would you share it all out continuously so everyone had enough and its worth appeared diminished? Or would you keep it, hold it, save it for yourself? And this is where people and greed go hand in hand. Whether it is through selfishness or the illusion of value, I'm not sure. Probably a combination though, with some meanness thrown in. So, although the world may be one or the other, I treat it as a Schrödinger problem until I have solid information I can verify. It is both round and flat. But what I am most interested in, and can unpick, is why they would want you to think something. The advantage it holds to them for us to believe we are on a precarious spinning ball flying through space. That we should ignore the parts of physics that would dispel that and focus on the parts that apparently neatly tie everything up, although they are subject to change or can be updated at any moment if they decide. And I am all for new information, but not just for the sake of it. It has been shown that there is much you can convince people of, and through the use of technology, it is not hard to create what you want people to see, literally. So we are left to work through what is available. The things that don't quite add up or make sense shouldn't be overlooked just because someone told you to. Give them a bit of time and thought, and come to your own conclusions, whatever that may be. Breaking the ice. An idea of what it might be that contains us, but from a few angles, and tying together some thoughts from what would seem to be wild theories, and will have some added speculation too. When there is talk of a flat earth, it usually comes with the fact we are surrounded by a wall of ice, which is our container, and that it is so high and thick we just can't get through it, or over it with any real resource or numbers to make something of it. Yet we try, they say. Another interesting idea that has been forming for a while, but had some new input recently, is of the firmament, and the thought that we are contained in a dome-like structure, sort of like a snow globe, so round and flat to a point. But our observable surface is flat to the eye, and the sky is what is rounded. And of that firmament or dome covering, it was put forward that it might be made of ice, and that is what holds us in. But as you get higher, it becomes more solid and again impenetrable. Yet we try with rocket launches and with weapons, which they say are trips to space or tests in the ocean. And they could well be, but it's an interesting idea. But a few thoughts followed on from that for me and linked together. Bear with me on this. Chemtrails, the Hopi prophecy, the Phoenix event, the Great Flood, and an atmospheric change, all interlinked by this idea. I'll try and explain it as best I can. If we have an icy dome covering us, I wondered about if it started to get smaller as part of a cycle, or lower for some reason, and the cold air would be brought downwards. This would also change the way the light from the sun would be viewed. Strangely, I gave thought to if chemtrails aren't actually chemtrails at all, but it suits their purpose for us to be worried about it being so. They are actually just a way to try and cover what would be seen, and the extra cold air is causing the vapour to remain and spread across the sky. My article, Structures in the Sky, looks a little more into the idea of a simulated sky, but this would be more, as the dome in a sense, would be real to a point. It is said of the Phoenix event that something occurs every 138 years, with the last one being in 1902. With a larger event on a longer cycle that dramatically changes our atmosphere, with a catastrophic event thrown in as well. Interestingly, the atmospheric change is referred to as a vapour canopy descending over us, changing the light spectrum, oxygen levels, frequencies, and sounds quite unusual. So, could it be that the solid exterior of the outer shell has a period when it is technically escapable? Part of the theory is that above the ice dome is actually another level and world, with water and atmosphere, and when the veil is thin, water descends upon us from above and deluges us, the Great Flood. And we still say of big rains today, the heavens opened. So could it be that there is an up there, maybe just not the idea of heaven that we have been given? And strangely, it was an animated film that then came to mind. Ice Age 3, Dawn of the Dinosaurs. The idea that under a great sheet of ice was actually a world hidden from view, with light, plants, animals, and its own ecosystem, albeit a prehistoric one. But it got me thinking of different levels of what we have deemed history, all coexisting at once, just not seen to each other unless there is a crossover point. A hidden cave, a crack in the ice, a mysterious tunnel. And could there then be another level above us, where our ice dome is actually just a sheet of ice to those above, but when it melts or becomes thin, that's when we see something. Or something starts to be revealed that can no longer be hidden. Maybe that's why Antarctica is sealed off, and Admiral Byrd's account of flying over it to witness lush forests and valleys and seeing other beings was something to take note of. It's hard to say what's really going on, but with the levels of money hoarding, secrecy and nefarious plans unfolding currently, it does almost feel as if something strange is coming, and they know it. The bit in between. The bit in between. A world between worlds of sorts. A double layer firmament A double layer firmament to add to my speculations in Breaking the Ice. With a play on words and things as we know them being possible truth within lies, I considered the following. Is the vacuum of space real after all? Now, I ask that question from the position that space as we have been taught it is a lie, and therefore doesn't exist in that capacity, but could within a different belief system of a dome covering the Earth or our enclosure. I'll try and explain what I mean, as even though the idea of real space is not possible in my theories, I can see how using those words and the concept of it, they could be telling of a gap of space between the first and second layer of the firmament or dome we reside in, an area that is above us. Making me think of that saying we have for when we have massive rainstorms. They say, "The heavens have opened." And for the longest time I gave that saying no extra thought, until you start to wonder about the idea of huge biblical floods, and why we might refer to heaven being up there. I've also speculated upon what this realm is, and our real geography in articles Flat or Round and Atlantis? No, that would be silly. Double rainbows. I'm amazed I didn't come to this theory earlier, to be honest. Even mentioning double rainbows and the idea that rainbows are a reflection of the firmament in my article, Rainbows. But could it be that the double rainbow effect is more special than I thought, and only occurs when two layers of the firmament are reflecting perhaps? Being entirely possible that there are more layers, as above, so below, and all that. Eclipses. Perhaps as they pass in their different layer of sphere, there is a crossing of paths, as it were, appearing as an eclipse. And the odd video or photo you see of what looks to be clouds behind the sun, or of the sun setting into the clouds, coming down through that different atmosphere, which isn't as clear as ours down here where the air is invisible. And I wondered further after seeing a picture of a simple density tower, because it is a version of what I had imagined in my head for the layers of our realm. If you are unfamiliar with it, it's just a tube holding various types of liquid to show how they sit on top of each other and can hold different objects within those layers, depending on their weight. In my mind, us being the bolt at the bottom of the stack, in honey, heavy and thick, not able to float, makes me think of when I've used the phrase towards a muggy day, saying it's like wading through treacle. But it also shows how there can be a bottom layer with all other layers sat above us, even holding objects within them. And if you change the liquids in the density tower from things like oil, soap, milk and honey to different liquids, ones that perhaps shimmer, stars, or create the aurora and show us a display through another layer of vapour or water or ice. Different densities and humidities of air and water, and possibly something else that I haven't thought of yet. It's still in the early stages of an idea at this point, with more thought to come on it, I'm sure. A world within a world. Currently, we are led to believe that they are trying to herd us into confined areas and smart cities, designed to keep us controlled within a controlled environment, taxing us per breath and movement in the not-so-distant future, being an obsessive and stalky parent-type jailer, but with a vampirish overtone, constantly wanting you to volunteer and comply of your own accord, handing yourself and your bloodline over for sacrifice, leading to there then being separate worlds within the world, which to a point we already have. Certain countries not entirely open to the whole world, countries that had previously been shut off or restricted as we are told. And there is even speculation, if you follow the Crater Earth, Bigger Earth theory, that there is more land than we have been told about, so could be countless other countries or lands, operating alongside us to a certain degree, but just as unaware as we are. And if you think out a bit further, it could easily be speculated that if we are in a contained environment, as with the firmament idea, or as a globe in a larger universe, then we are just a world within a world anyway. And as an extra layer, we are often said to have our own worlds going on in our heads as well. Again, being a world within a world, but a separated and detached one from outside. So far, your thoughts and ideas and processes in mind are hidden from external view, and still seem to be quite the mystery, yet we function adequately. Perhaps we are also disconnected from something else too, something external to us and where we are. I sometimes give thought to what Oppenheimer said about being the destroyer of worlds, as many have, wondering what was truly meant by it. And what world was destroyed, if any? Ours, Another world? Or perhaps it was a connection to something that was broken, leading us down a dark path. Although, it is entirely possible we were always on that dark path and have been prone to what we call the human condition for the longest time. There is another idea though. I guess I touched upon it in The Bit in Between and Cities in the Sky, of the idea that there are different levels, or realms perhaps above us and below us, that we are between worlds of sorts. Maybe that's why we have stories of purgatory, feeling as though we are trapped between the living and the dead somewhat, and maybe we are. The dead underneath us, and a different level of alive above perhaps. The underworld and heaven becoming the mythological fantasy versions of them. But maybe they started as other stories of wondrous cities in the sky and terrifying caverns down below, each with their own life forms and histories, just as we have in ours. Yet somewhere along the line, they became intermingled. Possibly a catastrophe engulfed or affected all three, and the borders became somewhat blurred for a time. Or things that were never meant to be seen became visible, giving rise to new theories, ideas and speculations, just as we have these days. Or of course, it could just be that we as humans are merely at the mercy of our imaginations and our ability for deception, both towards other people and ourselves. Makes it easy for our minds to find their way to mischief. But you never know. It may be within madness and mischief we find the answer. So I believe I shall keep looking. How it looks from the inside. I'll go straight in with the references and ideas that led to this one, as it's easier to explain after you know. Based on the idea that what we see out there is in fact an illusion or fabrication of reality. Ascension TV series. If you haven't seen it and want to, stop reading here, as this is a major spoiler for it. The entire premise being a group of selected people are sent to space for, reasons. But the twist is that they are in a simulated space shuttle, constantly monitored, frightened, controlled, and drugged as required for their experiment. It's quite a complex storyline, to be honest, and I enjoyed watching it, but the reveal is as follows. Someone gets punished, which in their version of society that has developed on the ship, means being ejected into space. They do it, and we get to see the person fall, but not into space, but back into the real world, which he's never been part of, as many were born on the ship as the experiment spanned a couple of generations already. The adjustment process for that person, from believing he was in space to seeing he wasn't, was a shock, as you can imagine. Silo, TV series. I haven't seen this one, but the premise is also about showing an illusionary outside to keep people where they are and keep them in a state of fear. Logan's Run movie. This old chestnut again. Although there was no illusion of what was outside, you just weren't allowed. Your domed city was your entire world. Biodome movie. A silly film, although enjoyable at the time, but of an experiment to put people in a biodome for a set amount of time. Some others sneak in and it gets ridiculous, but perhaps a little hint at what we are, I thought. And how ironic we should laugh at what we don't know we are in. Maybe. Planetarium. A domed ceiling showing space and the cosmos. Says it all, really. Scale that up to cover the land and sky, and you've got yourself a starry sky at night, and a clear colour during the day. Plasma. I think this is further on a bit from the thought I had in my article, The Bit in Between, that our dome could in fact be some kind of plasma covering, creating an enclosed biodome, helping to create the imagery needed for the illusion. But as it's electrically charged, sometimes we get lightning within the condensation, which we get to see. But that is just a mad theory of how and where lightning comes from, which reminds me of the plasma balls you see. Sometimes it is easy to see why they might want to confuse people, or dictate what they think they see, as it serves a purpose. So, it's not the why that most seem to have a problem with, although many do. It's the how, because it seems so beyond our current capabilities to have something that big and elaborate in play. So I get it, and question that myself. But what if it was already there, functioning as it should, and we are here, doing what we are meant to, trying to work it all out? Domed or doomed? It's a strange argument and discussion which has gathered pace in the last few years. Is the Earth flat or round? Seems it's an old discussion that has been resurrected, but with new ideas, information and perspectives. And within that, there is further thought occurring towards what it is that may encase or surround the perimeter of our land, sea mass and visible skies. A few things that link together for me about this, a mix of information, media and what is currently presented as fiction. Under the Dome, a TV series based on a Stephen King book about a mysterious invisible dome that gets dropped on a town. Haven't seen it, although I've watched a few shorts conveying the plot, characters and issues that ensue. But I have seen the Simpsons movie, where a glass dome is placed over the town. Could be just a storyline from nowhere, or somewhere, or is just a standard model now that will be repeated and reused as needed. Chernobyl, covered in a concrete dome, as well as many grand buildings, symbolising resurrection they say, and developed from religious architecture. But as they adorn quite spectacular buildings, there may indeed be more to it. Logan's Run, a domed city of people who were not allowed to leave, mostly not aware of the outside or the bigger landscape, happily going about their controlled life until such time as no longer required, at the age of 21. Weather. I'll put rainbows forward to start, as it is theorised that the arch we see from the ground level is a reflection of our domed perimeter. There is also other ideas which tie into that as well, probably already touched upon in my articles: structures in the sky, breaking the ice, flat or round, and so big they didn't notice. Cerebro, a spherical cavernous room for amplifying thoughts and telepathic energy, similar in its panelled appearance to the next item of interest. Las Vegas Sphere, a new arena location has opened, a mostly spherical shape with panelling to show the imagery in a surround 3D arrangement, with stunning visuals and quite the experience they say. Of course, could have nothing to do with the idea of Cerebro and is just of similar appearance. I wonder if maybe we are both domed and doomed. A different level. What is it that has caused huge changes in what we know as sea level? We talk of flooding in times past, on a biblical scale, and can see evidence of old coastlines and landscapes submerged, with many ancient depictions of floods and devastating events. I've already given thought to this briefly in the bit in between, of there being an extra layer around us which drained into our layer, causing a rise in sea levels. And now I wonder on a couple of other points, of how and where extra water could be displaced or appear to have come from somewhere else. Firstly, water is quite unique, they say, as an element, being able to exist in 3 different states. So if the water vapour as a gas became denser, it would mean less air above the water, increasing the volume of it to become solid, which then adds to the mass already here, and I guess we presume that it gets locked up in ice. But as water is denser than ice, it would seem to me that it sits on top or floats, as we know it does with icebergs and just your average little ice cubes. So it doesn't displace the water. Or the air density changes and creates a vast pressure pushing down on the existing volume of water, more than gravity does already, giving it a new level as such, without adding or taking any water away. Because what if gravity as we know it can change? Or the pressure can vary given the correct conditions, and then would affect the movable molecules in the atmosphere. And I keep thinking frequency is rather important here, from seeing the flat or round debate around water, and how they say it could not possibly cover a spherical object and maintain its position. After all, they call it water level, don't they? But a video of a common water experiment made me think of how it does maintain the flow on a round object. The experiment is a tap turned on with water running out of it in its normal downward trajectory, and once a certain frequency is introduced, the water suddenly changes its course to look like a corkscrew and is held in place while bending and still flowing. If we do indeed have a certain harmonic frequency being emitted from the Earth itself, either what they call the Schumann resonance or something else, then it could be possible that you could actually have a ball covered in water maintaining that flow, if the ball was tuned to the right frequency. And then I think of what you might be able to do if you could tweak that frequency, perhaps causing outrageous storms, high winds and huge waves in the middle of the ocean where the effect is greatest, starting a chain reaction that will travel and give rise to other events. The pond effect as you see it when they project a tsunami warning. And it may well be that the planet does that anyway, and that is how we have a constant motion of air and water that flows, at times being choppy and uncertain, or calm and tranquil. I guess controlling the weather is a big thing, and if you could be seen to control that, well, that would almost make you like gods, wouldn't it? I can see why some people might want others to think they can control it, or at least influence it. And recently, given all the strange clouds, unseasonal storms, and severity of things occurring, I can see why. But we as people are also opportunists, and the people who have put themselves in charge are a hyped up version of that, so would definitely take advantage of something natural and try and use it for purpose. And of course, it could be a bit of both, like with life, where we are at the mercy of nature and man alike, working together and against each other in a constant battle for control. Well, that's just how it appears, because when I put the wrath of nature next to the wrath of humans, in my mind, one very clearly has the upper hand.